Architects think that they know everything. I don't know nothing. Yeah.
The leading role is for you.
We didn't know where it's going to lead.
How do you navigate that as a big architecture studio?
Distance to things you cannot handle. It's huge.
Be yourself.
Maybe I was influenced by movies.
Hi everyone, I'm just going to quickly do an introduction again. If you watched the tour that we just showed you, you probably don't need another introduction to Kilian. But we are here today at Kadawittfeldarchitektur with Kilian Kada, and he is going to explain to us more about the inner workings of the company and about architecture in general. Thank you again, Kilian. And I think Maria would like to ask the first question for you.
When did you first know you wanted to be an architect? Did you ever doubt your decision? What factors influenced your career choice?
Thanks for having me for your channel. I think I was pretty late in finding out if I want to be an architect or not. Actually, finally, I think at the age of 35, when I was already kind of in a leading role in the office, I was still doubting. Yeah, it was clear that I want to do something with drawing and sculpture. I did a lot of cartoons when I was a kid, but even my father had an architectural office. I was not into the process of planning and designing, didn't really know nothing about it. Yeah. But when I started studying, it was pretty important that I did my diploma in Vienna in the studio of Wolf Prix, who is one of the founders of Kopimoblau. This opened my eyes that architecture could be more than just a building. Yeah? He taught us to think about architecture as art, to think about writings and to develop concepts out of music, yeah? Which was crazy. Because I was not experienced in this vertical studio of Prix. There were older students and I always thought, oh my God, I don't know nothing. Yeah? And all these guys doing models and drawings, and I was like, shit, I don't even know how to draw a section. Yeah?
Very relatable.
Therefore, I thought, well, I don't want to be mediocre. Yeah. If I'm an architect, I need to find out my passion for it, because I had so much respect and I had always doubts. Yeah. But from the beginning on, I was influenced, of course, by my family. And I didn't understand the task as an architect from my father, but I found out that there is a lot of passion for something. And I think if your father has passion, or your mentors or your relatives, you are getting curious about it. Yeah. But you need to find out for yourself what is interesting for you and what is your passion. And my mother was really into fashion. My brother was also interested in designing things. He's working as a graphic designer. All of them had influence. But to be an architect and to study architecture was quite a decision and was a long process. Of course, I was interested in contemporary architecture. I was not so much interested in history, but there were heroes for me. There were always heroes, like my father was interesting. Prix was interesting, there was Zaha Hadid coming up, and I was also interested in art like Anish Kapoor, because as an architect you have to deal with form, with proportions, but also the scenographic part of architecture is important. Maybe I was influenced by movies, but at the end there was a long time of doubts. And when I came to Aachen, of course, Gerd Wittfeld and Stefan Haas gave me confidence to move on. Yeah.
You mentioned your father being a big influence to you. So the studio was founded by your father and Gerd Wittfeld, who was a student, and your father was a professor. Could you tell us a little bit about how the history of the business came to be and how it grew into what it is today?
Actually, my father worked as an architect in Austria, in Graz. And in the 90s, his office was quite popular. He was well known in Austria, and therefore he was invited to have a professorship at the RWTH in Aachen. And he had the chance to lead the Gebäudelehre Lehrstuhl. This was also a chance for Gerd, because he was a student that time. My father was a kind of mentor for Gerd, and Gerd found out it might be a chance to think about a kind of sub-company of the Austrian office here in Aachen. And my father needed, because he became professor when I started studying architecture in Vienna, and my father needed to have an apartment. And the apartment was like an apartment with a working table like that, kind of a studio, also for the young architects like Gerd. In the beginning, the studio in Aachen did projects in Austria and supported architects in Austria for my father's office. But there were several competitions, and with the insurance company here, Aachen Münchener in Aachen, it was the first bigger project for the office here in Aachen. And with that project, Gerd became more responsibility. He got the room to develop his idea of leading an office. Yeah? In the early mid-2000s, my father did not have the professorship anymore, which was somehow good that this office here in Aachen could develop somehow on their own. And of course, father was generous. Gerd had the will to do something with the Aachen office. That time, Gerd was kind of an older brother for me. I did not think about joining the office. There was not a scheduled plan for development of Aachen Studio. Actually, at the end, it was my decision to try to find out if I like to work here together with Gerd. Yeah? My father did not say you need to go to Aachen. He actually had no idea, like I had no idea. Yeah? I was like in doubt, and I thought, well, let's try Aachen office. We didn't know where it's going to lead. I was so happy that Gerd and Stefan supported me, that my colleagues invited me. They respected me as an architect, not as son of the founder of the office. So that was quite cool to find out my stability and my development without any goal. Yeah? Because as a young architect, you always think 2 years seem to be like eternity. You need to find out that 2 years is nothing and you have time to develop.
So Kadawittfeldarchitektur is obviously quite a big studio, and you mentioned there's a lot of projects happening simultaneously and a lot of people at stake and a lot of stuff basically going on at the same time. However, we're also in a time where there's a lot of economic instability in the world, and it's not very clear what's going to happen with the architecture market and in general.
Yeah.
How do you navigate that as a big architecture studio, and maybe what are some decisions you had to make in management, and how did you feel about them?
I think navigating is a challenge anyway, yeah? If there is crisis or not. It's always necessary for us architects to find out what's happening around us. You need to analyze, communicate, find time to reflect all that. Yeah? That's the way to handle crisis, developments or changes. We architects, we studied architecture. To run an office or company means that you need to know about management, people and culture, sustainability issues, about all the computer-aided designs or even artificial intelligence, and that's a challenge. Yeah? And the biggest challenge is actually to listen to people that can support you, to find out what you want to do as a company and as a person. Architects think that they know everything, yeah? But that's not the case.
Not the first person that
Yes.
Yeah.
And the next question will be, what do you believe is the most important quality an architect should have to lead the firm successfully?
Sometimes you don't know, you start to lead a kind of company, yeah? You need to have empathy for people, the will to work a lot, diligence. You need to have character and self-confidence somehow. There is kind of a goal to be the leading architect and to run an architectural company. But maybe it's quite hard for young architects to say, I start my own company. Yeah? It's getting more difficult. So maybe you start to work in a big office where you can climb the hierarchies. You need to find out different ways to sell your ideas. Maybe you go to university. There is not the one quality. Yeah? If you want to move something, you need to have the will and endurance. Doing management is no problem, but to empower people and to kind of excite people with your ideas is a different task.
So you don't really have a conscious understanding of I'm going to do this to become a leader. You kind of grow into one and develop and see if you fit the role in a sense.
Yeah.
When did you understand that you will become a lead architect, or the leading role is for you?
That's a good question. I think as a kid I had a lot of self-confidence. I was grown up protected. I was the second born, so there was a lot of attention towards my personality, and I had all the freedom. But during studies and during growing up, I started to doubt about my personality, because my father is a strong personality, my mother and my brother. I thought like they are cool and I want to be like them, but then you start to understand that you need to grow your own passion for something. That was pretty tough to understand. What person am I? What do I want to do? Don't do that what others expect from you, but try to find out what is good for you.
Be yourself. What key changes or trends do you think will happen in architecture in the next few years?
Probably the biggest challenge will be to convince society that architecture is not only about costs, time, schedule, engineering and sustainability. Architecture is about elegance and beauty. And to convince society that architecture and sustainable solutions with quality are a kind of long-term invest. It's not about short money and quick money and saving money. At first, it's about knowing that it pays off, yeah? And therefore we need to communicate and we need to fight for that. Architects are kind of mediators, yeah? They need to convince the client, they need to convince the city department, all the engineers. On the one hand, there are so many expectations, but you need to find out first what is the right solution at the moment and convince society about that, yeah, and that takes some time. You need to be stable because there are so many opinions and so many issues trying to box you off the road, yeah. That's the task.
Thank you. Thanks. Could you share an example of a project that didn't go as planned and what you learned from the experience?
In any project, there are things that don't go as planned, yeah? Every day there is something different. You need to stay cool about that, yeah? I mean, we do so many competitions and we lose a lot of competitions for different reasons, yeah? And there are also buildings we are not happy about with aspects of it. What do? Do you kill yourself? No. You need to have humor and you need to have distance to things you cannot handle. The most important thing is you think you did your best and due to certain things it came different. Yeah? It sounds stupid or easy, but try to learn of the failures and try to do it better. Yeah? You always find things in buildings you might have done different. Yeah? If there is a concept which is stable, if you have concept on many levels that fulfill certain things, it's quite successful, yeah? I don't know, it depends on the kind of architect. If there is an architect who is really into every detail and every centimeter of any gap between materials, it's hard to tell you what special project. Always the newest projects are the most interesting. And the oldest projects, you forget about it, but sometimes you see it in different circumstances and you think, that was a good idea. I didn't see that.
You can be happy all over again.
Yeah, I mean, think about if there is a skyscraper, yeah? If you visit the construction site and you think, wow, it's huge. And what is the impact from that building to the surroundings? Yeah? Of course, you have a lot of respect and you are overwhelmed what you did. Because of course you try to do your best, but some aspects are different than in reality. Sometimes it's even better, sometimes it's not that good. Yeah? But talk about your colleagues about that and together you will find out to improve at the end.
Kilian, if you have to start Kadawittfeldarchitektur all over again, thankfully you don't have to, but if you had to, what is the one thing you would do first to make it into the successful studio it is today?
It's cool actually that you guys have the perception that we are a successful studio, yeah? And you think we are doing a good job. That's great. That gives a lot of confidence. But actually, I don't want to talk about the past so much. It's hard to tell you what I would change. The past is interesting, but to survive, you need to go ahead and think about tomorrow, yeah? you need to find out what are your weaknesses, and you need to find out that you share these weaknesses, at least within your company. Yeah? In future, it's important to focus on communication, to think about the chances for people and culture, to involve more people and to involve them for more responsibility, because sometimes we find out we are too old. We need to have successors. We need to think about future. Maybe it doesn't work. You need to find out how to deal with crisis, how we can communicate our ideas into the society without only thinking about selling our ideas, but sharing knowledge. And therefore, it's very important to do things like that. Magazines about your work, about architecture, but not only about architecture, but about the context. If you do a stadium for horse riding, talk about horses and talk about what horses need, yeah? And tell people it's not about form and structure and house technique, it's about context and that you care about people using it. So that's important, yeah? Be honest, be true to yourself and convince people that it's worth it to hire architects.
How is the process of making important decisions organized within the company?
There is executive board. We are 5 in this board. Mr. Wittfeld, Mr. Haas, Jasna Moritz and Dirk Lange and myself. So it's good to be a team, not to think about all the duty carrying on your shoulders. You can share and you can divide things. Then there are associate partners, experienced architects that know how to lead big projects. And of course there are associates. It's very important that associates are the younger generation growing into leadership, and that there are a lot of women, that there are a lot of people from different parts of the office. There is so much information about and so much different aspects in architecture. Our office is more like a swarm, sharing knowledge and empowering people.
That's it.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for your time.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you for inviting us again.
Thank you,
Aachen.
guys.
This was Marchitecture and Kadawittfeldarchitektur with Kilian Kada. Fertig.